Okay. I'm back. Oh boy, we just got a lot of information dump on this one. Or last video, I mean. So, what now? Upon leaving the Garden of Beginnings, I found myself atop the shrine in the farthest hall. Only royals could open this room, and on top of that, it was nighttime. As moonlight streamed in through the thin, high-placed windows, I fell into thought. I had no idea what time it was right now, so contacting the royal family was out of the question. It was one thing to send them an ordinance during dinner time, but when they were bathing or sleeping? Even I understood that it was much too risky. Lisletta wouldn't mind, though, I think. She had come to the Royal Academy as my attendant and would be able to contact the royal family at an opportune time. That was surely my best move. This is Rosemary, I said to ignore nods. I am currently in the farthest hall at the back of the auditorium. My apologies, but please contact the royal family. There's no way for me to leave unless one of them opens the door for me. I must also ask you to bring me a hooded cloak when you come to fetch me. One that will cover me from head to toe. I do not wish for others to see me as I am now. Oh, but the cloak must be an appropriate size for an adult, not a child. I repeat, an adult. I was fairly confident that I had made my wishes clear. Lisletta would doubtless arrive with at least one of the royals. I couldn't let them see my loosely bundled hair or the tattered clothes beneath my high bishop's robes. I swung my staff and the white bird passed through the window en route to its destination. Well, that's that, I said, then formed my high beast and jumped down from the bottom of the shrine. There I made the Book of Messinora and started to read. Because I'd imagined it as an electronic tablet, it shone with a faint light that made its text easy to see, even in this dark chapel. Ah, now it doesn't matter how long the royal family leaves me waiting. Of course, I wasn't reading for pleasure. This was a serious investigation. I'd glimpsed something about stealing foundations, which had reminded me of Georgine's intentions with Ehrenfest. I needed to know more. From what I remembered, I'd started to panic when the focus of my newly acquired knowledge had turned to duchy foundations, so it was perhaps obvious. I ran a search using the first keyword that came to mind, and then delved into the history of foundations and the battles that had taken place over them. Here, this is it. I need to tell Sylvester right away. A text written in the Book of Messinora had shaken me to my core. I needed to relay this information to Ehrenfest as soon as possible and prepare for Georgine's attack. Is there enough time? She might have already made her move. Last year she had planned to act at the start of winter, and we had only managed to outmaneuver her thanks to the intelligence we received from Matthias and the others as soon as we'd arrived at the Royal Academy. If she was following the same schedule again this year, then her attack would have come any day now. It shouldn't be easy for her to worm her way in now that her collaborators are out of the picture, but who can say for sure? Our purge last winter had ideally eradicated the noble's name sworn to Georgine, but there was a chance she had other allies we didn't know about. Unable to sit still, I climbed out of my high beast and turned back into a face stone. Eep! I started pacing around the shrine, but immediately twisted my ankle and fell over. The floor was cold, and the sensation reminded me to cool my head. I crawled over to the shrine and sat down on its bottom step. Calm down, Rosemary. You managed to send an ordinance to Lisletta, so Lady Georgine can't have stolen the foundation yet. Panicking wouldn't get me out of here any sooner. Ordinances couldn't cross duchy borders, meaning I couldn't send one to Ehrenfest. A magic letter could, but I didn't have one on me. The best I could do right now was to learn as much about foundational magic from the Book of Messinora as I could. I mean, this is the Grutershite the royal family is looking for, so I'll need to be extra careful about who sees it. Now, while I'm all alone, is the perfect opportunity to give it a thorough look through. In an attempt to calm my nerves, I devoted all of my attention to the book. I was only drawn back to my senses when a bright flash came from the chapel door, and once I stood and turned to face it, they had come to get me sooner than expected. A group of several people entered, with Sigiswald and Hildebrand at the very front. Behind them and their retainers were Lisletta, Cornelius, Matthias, and Gracia. Lady Rosemary, Lisletta exclaimed. She rushed over with a folded cloak in her hands, and a look of sincere concern on her face. I see you brought what I requested, I replied. Thank you ever so much, Lisletta. She wrapped the cloth around me with some help from Gracia. I am glad to see you safe. We were truly worried. Lisletta, Gracia, my apologies, but could you keep these shoes and tattered clothes hidden from the others? I said in a quiet voice. Gracia swiftly retrieved them under the guise of adjusting my sleeves, then enveloped them in some cloth she'd brought. That would save me a lot of embarrassment. There we go. I handled this perfectly, didn't I? After confirming that the slightly oversized cloak was covering me from head to toe, I took Cornelius' hand and slowly approached the others. His escort meant I wasn't likely to fall over again, but I wanted permission to use my high beast anyway. Better safe than sorry. Having carried out the duties, Lisletta and Gracia moved to stand behind me, conscious of all the eyes on us. Meanwhile, Cornelius and Matthias waited on either side of me. Next thing I knew, Hildebrand was standing in front of me. Rosemary, why are you here? Looking up at me in shock. We'd stood practically at the same height before my disappearance, but now I was more than a head taller than him. It made me realize just how much I'd grown. I visited the garden in the beginnings, where this divinity, Ewerman, asked on walks the god of growth to make me, well, grow. I explained. The Garden of Beginnings? Hildebrand clearly had so many more questions to ask, but I didn't have time to answer them. I said, Rucken, to get rid of my Gurgeshite, then carefully made my way over to Sigiswald. His eyes were so much closer than being level than mine. Prince Sigiswald, I do not wish to inconvenience you, but can we discuss the details of my absence during the Archduke Conference? I must remain turned to Ehrenfest at once to speak with the Ob. Sigiswald gave me permission to leave and to use my high beast, which was good. I still wasn't used to seeing the world from so much higher up, and while some shin-length robes wouldn't have been too bad, trying to travel on foot in low-hem ceremonial attire was far too dangerous. I climbed into my single-person panda bus, ignoring the looks I was getting from the royals, who clearly wasn't ready for our conversation to end, and returned to the dormitory. Cornelius, Lazetta, where is everyone? I'd expected the dormitory to be alive with bustling students, as it always was. Instead, I was met with darkness and an eerie silence. I couldn't help but look around in shock. They have returned to Ehrenfest, Cornelius replied. This year's graduation ceremony came and went. You were absent for an entire season, Lady Rosamund. We were so very worried. What? An entire season? So essentially the Archduke Conference is not even... Wait, has the Archduke Conference happened? No, it's the introductory tournament, then the graduation ceremonies. Okay. Oh, boy. Yeah, y'all better hurry. The academic term was over, and we were now almost in spring. From my perspective, it had only been a day or two at most. Might I ask when you intend to join them? Lazetta asked. It was almost 7th bell, so there won't not be time to return today. If you need a few days to rest, that can easily be arranged. She was hinting that she could delay sending word to Ehrenfest, but I shook my head. I need to get back as soon as possible. Cornelius, Matthias, contact Ehrenfest. I said I shall sleep in the dormitory tonight and return home tomorrow. Assuming there are no issues, I am hungry and exceptionally tired. A lot must have happened over the winter to make you grow this much, Cornelius remarked. Take as much rest as you need, Rosamund. He then reached out to me, intending to pat my head, but stopped short. I changed so much that he was starting to question whether the gesture was still acceptable. I pulled off my hood, then grabbed his hand and placed it on my head. It was exhausting. Please pat my head, dear brother. You need to hurry and grow on the inside too, Cornelius replied. He was wearing a conflicted expression, but ultimately conceded. In the meantime, I asked Grisha to head to the kitchen and get Hugo to prepare a meal for me. Hartman is going to lose his mind when we tell him get back tomorrow, Cornelius muttered with a grimace. He then waved me away and said, you should go rest for now. Yes, he is going to lose his mind, especially when he finds out what happened. Oh, boy, what's Sarah Buster going to say? Are you going to tell him? He's going to have to tell him. I nodded and went with Lazetta to my room when I got rid of my high beast and removed my cloak. Grisha arrived with my food a short while later, but froze the moment she saw me. Because I was taller now, I could no longer see under the bangs covering her blue-green eyes. My apologies, Lady Rosamund, she eventually said. It might take me a while to get used to the new you. Before, I'd always needed to look up at Grisha, but now I was her height. Or perhaps just a tiny bit shorter. I really had shot up. But I'm still not as tall as Lazetta. Well, I mean, as long as you're not, like, a kid size, I think you're good. Still, she continued, what actually happened to you? Hartman was declaring non-stop that you were getting taller, but I never expected such an extreme growth spurt. How did he know? How is he knowing all this, guys? Or wait, he's name sworn now, so maybe he could sense it? Indeed, Lazetta added with a nod. You were so small and adorable before, but now you look so beautiful and grown up. I sighed. Wehrman told me my vessel was not big enough for his needs, then got on walks the god of growth to make me like this. The process was excruciating, I said, removing my ceremonial robes to reveal the tattered clothes beneath. Lazetta and Grisha widened their eyes in surprise. You outgrew even your socks? Lazetta cried, unable to believe what she was seeing. How could anyone allow that to happen when you had no change of clothing or any attendance present? And is Anwaks not male? I consider it wonderful that you have grown so beautiful, Grisha proclaimed. At the same time, however, though you have been looking forward to this for ages, that he would tarnish the memory is unforgivable. It was nice that they both shared my helpless anger at the gods. To be honest, Grisha, seeing that we are the same height, maybe you appreciate how much I've grown, I said. Before, there were no mirrors. I could use other people I could draw comparisons to, so I didn't feel changed at all. I'd been in so much pain and so desperate to look presentable that I hadn't stopped to admire my new appearance. Now that I had a mirror, though, I could see that I had turned into a very attractive young woman. I almost couldn't believe it. Unless I started paying more attention to how I acted, I'll probably end up being seen as an even greater waste of beauty than Angelica. Still, were your actions earlier wise, Lady Rosamund? Lazetta asked nervously while helping me move my clothes. You prioritized Ehrenfest over the royal family. It didn't really concern me. Hildebrand and Sigiswald had both given me their permission, even if only because I'd scrambled their brains with my sudden change of appearance. I didn't expect there to be any issues. The royal family allowed it, so I don't believe we have anything to worry about, I said. I am more concerned about Ehrenfest, and in any case, my clothes were in tatters. I did not have an outfit for tomorrow, let alone a formal sit-down with members of royalty. Preparing the clothes necessary for the meeting at such short notice would never have been possible. Even when I returned to Ehrenfest, I would need to wear my High Bishop robes until we could make new clothes for me. Lisletta and Grisha exchanged a look, then went into my clothing room. They returned a moment later with some clothes that were the perfect size for an adult. Hartman was so insistent that you were growing that Brunhilde left several of her outfits here for you, Lisletta explained. I should also note that we have contacted the Gilberta Company and asked them to halt any commissions they have currently working on for you. From the moment I disappeared, Hartman had apparently started telling everyone that Mestanora had summoned me. He'd spent each day in a dreamlike trance, narrating how my mana was growing. Everyone in the dormitory had ended up less worried about me and more concerned about how to shut him up. Of course. Of course. What the heck? That's more than a little scary. We were skeptical, Lisletta continued, but Hartman spoke with such overwhelming confidence, and the other names sworn to you told us they could also feel that you were growing, so we made a few preparations. Lisletta then looked to Grisha, who nodded and said, I am enveloped in your mana, Lady Rosamund, and could sense that it was growing stronger. I saw it as evidence that you were alive, though unlike Hartman, I did not think it meant you were physically growing. There were several reasons why I was borrowing from Brunhilde in particular. Her clothes had been made in the same style as my own, which meant they had easily adjustable lace at the back. They were winter clothes she had ordered since being engaged to the Ops, so they were both trendy and appropriate for someone of my status. And on top of that, because she had come of age, there was nothing wrong with her leaving them here at the Royal Academy. You will need to get remeasured and order new clothes upon returning to the castle, Lisletta noted, but until then, these should serve you well. I am shocked, I said, truly shocked. I changed into some adult-sized undergarments, donned some light face-stone armor, then put on Brunhilde's clothes. They were a bit too long for me and tight around the chest, but we could always hand them up and relax the lace on the back to give me more room. During my absence, Lisletta had spent her free time preparing undergarments for me. Because I was going through a growth spurt, she determined thus I couldn't have enough. Your shoes must naturally be made to suit your feet, so you will need to make some for the face stones for now. That's fine, I can definitely spare the mana. Once I'd eaten dinner, I took a bath. Lisletta and Grisha used that opportunity to tell me what I'd missed during the academic term. The lay nobles and men noble dedication rituals had concluded with that incident, and anyone who'd inquired about my sudden absence had been told that I'd taken ill. Hannelore had apparently been extremely worried about me by the end of the term, and even sent me some good books as a get-well presents. As for my retainers, Hartman and Damiel had transcribed the documents and received from Klassenberg. Then, during the introductory tournament, the fade paper we'd made had been delivered to Ferdinand. Oh, I imagine Ferdinand's worried sick too. Did they tell him? Matthias hadn't been able to decide on a partner to escort for his graduation, and the children of the former Veronica faction had united in serious discussion to decide what to do. Matthias ended up escorting Audley, Lisletta informed me. As someone without parents, he struggled to find a partner from another duchy. He might have been able to escort Grisha or Miriella, but there was not enough time for them to prepare clothes. Never in my wildest dreams had I imagined that Matthias would escort Audley. He was a handsome fellow and a fine noble, so I'd assumed that he could easily nab a girl or two. As it turned out, there were so many things I needed to do in place of his parents. I am a failure of a lady. How can I apologize to him? There is no need, Lady Rosamund, Grisha said firmly. Matthias never intended to find someone to escort, as he was the son of the previous Geeb Gerlach and already knew he would go with you to the sovereignty. If he had wanted a partner in a situation similar to his own, he would have needed to act much sooner. Even a normal student would need to find a partner, introduce them to their parents, and meet their partner's parents at the introductory tournament, assuming they were from another duchy. And that was just the beginning of the groundwork. That would need to be laid in time for their graduation. Grisha was adamant that if Matthias had wanted to escort someone else, it was his own fault for not having introduced me to anyone sooner. Lorenz saw Matthias' situation and took it as a warning that he would need to begin his own preparations as soon as possible, Lisletta said. But let us leave our discussion there for today. There is much for you to do tomorrow, is there not? I certainly was tired, so I obediently climbed into bed. Tomorrow was going to be a busy day. After breakfast the next morning, I got everyone to pack their things in preparation for our return to Ehrenfest. My guard knights didn't have much luggage with them since they'd only been staying at the Royal Academy in shifts, but Lisletta and Grisha hadn't left since my disappearance. Please accept my apologies, both of you, I said. It was quite all right, Lady Rosamund, Lisletta replied. It would not have made sense for us to stay in the castle without Our Lady there. Audley could gather intelligence in the castle on her own, which had allowed Lisletta and Grisha to stay in the dormitory. The scholars hadn't been able to join them because they had work to do in both the castle and the temple, while the knights had training to partake in. Once everyone was ready to go, we started toward the teleportation hall. Because of a rather embarrassing display while getting changed, I was in my panda bus once again. I'd managed to bump into everything within my reach, and subsequently fell over in front of my two attendants. Not wanting me to navigate the stairs in my current state, they had advised that I use my high beast. A welcome party is already waiting for us in Ironfest, Cornelius said when he met up with them downstairs. Lizetta will return with Lady Rosamund, so Matthias Grisha, could you stay a little longer to ensure all the luggage and the chef are sent over? You won't need to worry too much since Norbert will carry out a final check when he comes to lock the door. We arrived at the teleportation hall as those final checks were being discussed. The two knights stationed there recoiled when they saw me, their expressions tinged with subconscious revulsion at this uncanny development. On instinct, I took a step back. My retainers had been troubled by my sudden growth spurt, but this was the first time anyone had reacted with displeasure. Are you still not used to your new height? Matthias asked with a reassuring smile, as if telling me not to worry about the knights, and gently urged me forward. The burden of Anwuk's blessing is a heavy one. I smiled in turn. Matthias, I entrust the rest to you. Please return with Gracia when you can, as you will. Cornelius, Lizetta, and I then stepped onto the magic circle. The knights on the other side reacted in the same way as their Royal Academy counterparts, leaving me with an unpleasant taste in my mouth as I exited the room. There you are, Rosamund, boomed her unmistakable voice. Oh, Hartman said you'd grown, but look at you. You're the most beautiful woman in all of Jurgenschmidt. You exaggerate, grandfather. Cornelius was quick to intervene. You're too close, he exclaimed, trying to wave away the over-eager Bonifacius. Please take a step back. Waiting behind Bonifacius were Sylvester, Florencia, Wilfrid, Charlotte, Melchior, and their retainers. Their jaws all dropped. Of course, my own retainers were there, too. So many eyes on me. Sylvester, it is good to see you again, I said. I am sorry to have worried you. Forgive me for being so blunt, but may I have a moment of your time? There's something extremely important we must discuss. I know how Lady Georgina intends to steal Ehrenfest's foundation. Sylvester's look of shock hardened into one of grim determination. As this relates to the Foundation, I continued, you are the only one I mean to inform. Please summon me when we can speak alone. We'll speak now. This isn't something that can wait. Bonifacius, escort Rosamund to my office. Sylvester then wheeled around, his cape flourishing in the process, and marched away with his retainers in tow. Meanwhile, Bonifacius placed one hand firmly on his hip, imploring me to hold on to his arm. I smiled and obliged. In the past, my eyes had only reached his wrist, but now they reached up to his elbow. Wilfrid stood protectively beside Bonifacius and me, then my other siblings did the same. They were basically forming a defensive circle around us. Hartman wouldn't shut up about how much he'd grown, Wilfrid said. Looks like he was telling the truth. That's a shocker. I'm a beauty now, wouldn't you say? Not even I could believe it when I first looked in the mirror. Yep, you really are. But you didn't grow on the inside, did you? Somehow the gap between your looks and your personality is even worse now. That makes us the same, then. Huh? Not at all, I've grown a lot. Your personality, dude. As we bantered, I tried to eyeball which one of us was taller. Annoyingly enough, he just barely won out. He must have hit a growth spurt, too, and it seemed to me that he was still getting taller. Welcome back, Sister, Charlotte said. Oh my, you are taller than me now. Even if only a little. What a strange feeling. Oh, she's right. Now I actually look like her big sister. Yeah, he's barely taller than her, and she's real taller than Melchior now. At the moment, I was more grateful to Ewerman and Elmox than ever before. I'd regained my dignity as an older sister. As I trembled with emotion, Melchior gazed up at me, looking equally moved. Hartman told me in the temple that Mestinor, the goddess of wisdom, invited you to the world of the gods, he said. He told me you were growing through their blessing, but I can't believe it was all true. Hartman? I sharply turned to the man in question, who was innocently smiling at me. I spoke only the truth, he said. Before my very eyes, Mestinor, the goddess of wisdom, swept you away. The entire time you were gone, I could feel that you were growing. Melchior watched me closely for a moment, then said, was he lying after all, sister? I racked my brain for an appropriate answer. The problem was that Hartman was mostly right. He was not, no, I eventually replied. The majority of what he said was accurate. It was a blessing from Anwux that caused me to grow. So you were blessed, sister. It isn't quite true, but I can't think of a good explanation. Worst of all is that victorious expression on Hartman's face. I wanted to go to Sylvester's office as quickly as I could. The realization that my sudden growth and Hartman's propaganda had only added to the story of my sainthood was making me uncomfortable. But unfortunately for me, I still couldn't walk very well. My knees buckled almost immediately, forcing me to cling onto Bonifacius' arm. My apologies, grandfather. I'm still not used to this body, so... Then allow me, he said, hefting me up before I could say what I wanted to use my high beast. He'd acted so swiftly that Cornelius hadn't even been able to stop him. I am much heavier than before, I said. Please put me down. Nonsense, your extra weight makes things easier for me, if anything. Bonifacius declared, brimming with pride. You were so light before that I didn't know what to do with you, but now that you're a grown woman, I've got plenty of experience carrying my wife, so there's no trouble at all. My knights were all wavering in the face of this new development, unsure to how to react to their charge suddenly being taken from them. What are your orders, Lady Rosamund? Angelica asked. Should we launch an offensive to free you from my master? Oh my god, that would not go well. Because Rosamund would be in the very thick of it. That sounds violent, and a lot more likely to put me in danger, I replied. Remain at ease for now. I relaxed my muscles and allowed Bonifacius to carry me. At the very least, he didn't seem taken aback or repulsed. He was genuinely excited to see that I had grown. Most people get carried around when they're young and lose that privilege once they are grown up, I mused. But the inverse is true when grandfather is doing the carrying. I might as well enjoy this while I can. Oh boy. In the foundational magic. In the end, Bonifacius carried me to the Archduke's office as though I were a child. Karstead and the Vice Commander of the Knight's Order, who were both standing outside the room, blinked when he saw me in his arms. I doubt they expected to see me all grown up, and in a princess carry. Karstead shot Cornelius a worried glance, then he gave his jubilant father a brief, exasperated smile before adopting a more neutral expression and opening the door for us. Lady Rosamund, Ehrenfest awaits, he said. Indeed, I replied. Grandfather, I thank you ever so much for your support. Once he had set me down, I carefully made my way into the room where Sylvester and Sylvester alone awaited me. The door shut behind me, and instinctively I spun around. Or at least I tried to before I could completely turn. I tripped over my ankles and dramatically collapsed. Sylvester barely attempted to hide his amusement, then erupted into laughter. What are you doing? Here I was all nervous, thinking we were about to have a serious conversation. I'm still not used to this body. You don't mind me using my high beast chair in the castle, do you? He stopped guffawing, although he was still grinning from ear to ear, and came over to help me up. I took his hand, got back to my feet, and resolved to walk even more carefully. I couldn't stop bumping into things and tripping over while I was getting changed this morning, I griped. Then my knees buckled when I tried to walk with grandfather. Makes sense that you'd want to use your high beast, Sylvester replied. Then he grimaced and said, but do you really want to be seen in that thing? Everyone, especially when you're new, look. My panda bust is adorable, okay? I shot back, my cheeks puffed out. It doesn't look anything like a grunt. It makes no sense to change my high beast when Leslie was both cute and convenient. It doesn't suit you anymore. Nor do the ways you act and speak. Anyone who sees you now is going to expect a genuine saint. Wolfrid said the same thing, and after seeing my reflection in the mirror, I agree with you both, but what can I do? Putting on an occasional front is manageable enough. Completely reworking one's personality is not. I thought you, of all people, would understand that. Sylvester took one look at my smile and was making it very clear that he hadn't changed much either, then frowned and nodded. Yeah, I guess you've got me there. Yeah. I sat down opposite Sylvester and took a deep breath. The reason for our meeting was a serious one. He gave me a stern-looking response. So, about my sister, he began. You know how she intends to steal the foundation. For an Ob, having one's foundation stolen was the absolute worst-case scenario. It meant losing one's duchy and was a veritable death sentence, as the new Ob would immediately kill whomever they had stolen the foundation from to prevent it from being stolen back. In such situations, it was very common for the rest of the usurped archducal family to be killed as well. Sometimes one young member might be spared and engaged to a child of the new archducal couple. A tactic used to better control the previous generation of nobles, but Georgine was already from Ehrenfest. There was no reason for her to let any of us live. On second thought, the mana shortage was truly pretty dire. Maybe she would spare Sylvester's children and imprison them in the Ivory Tower where they would spend the rest of their days having their mana drained? But could that really be described as living? I do not have conclusive evidence, I said, but if we consider her theft of our Bible, there can be only one explanation. Wait, that's what you're basing this on? Not some new hidden passageway or magic tool you've come across? I will start with my conclusion, I said. Maybe there were other paths to be considered, but the information I'd absorbed about the country's found temples and the role of the Bible had made one thing clear to me. The true location of each duchy's foundation is directly below its temple chapel. What? Sylvester choked. He froze in place for several seconds, then shook his head in total disbelief. What? Of course, not just anyone can reach the foundation. It resides in an ivory building, or ivory room separated from the temple through magic means. I would hope so, but to think it's under the temple, not the castle. It stands to reason that people came to assume the foundation was located in the castle. The magic tool passed down from Ob to Ob is a key necessary for teleporting to the foundation, and the door it must be used with is located in the Archduke's room. This misconception has plagued all those throughout history who have invaded a duchy's castle and torn it apart in search for the foundation. Sylvester's face twisted into a particular severe grimace. If an Ob died without passing down the magic tool serving as the key to their foundation, their successor would need to search for it. In most cases, it would be on the Ob's person or inside a hidden room, but they didn't look like regular keys and were always miserable. They were thus always miserable to find. I continued, but there's also a secondary key, one that was given to future Obs in advance of their succession. If a new Ob found themselves unable to access the main key, the secondary key would allow them to carry out their duties while they searched. By this logic, it shouldn't have been necessary for anyone to supply the foundation, the Mana Replenishment Hall, from the Mana Replenishment Hall while desperately trying to find where it was hidden. Rosemine, this is the first I've heard of a secondary key. It certainly wasn't given to me. Or I certainly wasn't given one. Don't tell me my father gave it to Georgie. He didn't, I said, shooting down the idea before Sylvester could turn a truly terrifying shade of white. How much do you remember about Jürgen Schmidt's founding? A bit. Where are you going with this? He probably thought I was derailing our conversation, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I assume you haven't forgotten that the first Zent also served as a high bishop. It seemed only natural to place the foundation in a temple where one prayed to the gods. Foundations were created alongside temples so that all prayers could flow into them, not just those from the Zent, and to make it easier for those prayers to reach the gods, Zents were also responsible for creating Bibles and the divine instruments, which they would do while creating a duchy's foundation. That such work was counted among their duties made it seem to me that only those who obtained the Grucheshite would ever learn it. For some time afterward, the country's apparent also served as high bishops, I said. You surely know this by now, but it was an important duty for obtaining divine protections and increasing mana capacities for religious ceremonies. Yeah, it makes sense. As generations had passed, the Obs apparently dedicated themselves to religious ceremonies, and the temple had ended up politically weaker than the other archduke who could spend time in the castle and unify nobles under themselves. Even when the Obs apparently became actual Obs, they were treated as mere figureheads who existed only to perform religious ceremonies. Over time, the connection between religion and politics weakened until archduke candidates started refusing to visit the temple entirely. The system the first Zent had created fell out of use, and its purpose was quickly forgotten. As much as I appreciate the history lessons, Sylvester said, what's your point? The key for opening the Bible, which was originally always given to the future Ob, is a secondary key meant for opening the doors of the foundation in the temple. That was why it hadn't been too much of a problem in the past when Obs had abruptly died. Lady Georgine exchanged many intimate letters with Besenwans, the former high bishop, so I suspect that she learned something about this from him. He was the only one she knew who ever touched the Bible. Normal nobles never went near the temple. Related classes at the Royal Academy only covered the basics, and public perception meant that few bothered to delve any deeper. I wasn't sure whether Georgine had ever visited the temple, but Besenwans had certainly visited the castle and the nobles' quarter, and the letters he shared with Georgine had made it very clear that he doted on her. You say that, but if Georgine really had known about all this, she would have tried to steal the foundation a long time ago. Before leaving for Arensbach, before I was made Ob, when she visited Ehrenfest, but what if she didn't learn the truth about the foundation until after I'd taken over as High Bishop? It would have been much harder for her to get the key then. Ah, right. Back when she visited, I gave her permission to take some of my uncle's letters as mementos. Most of them were letters she'd written, but there were a few he'd written to her, but hadn't managed to send. That information must have been in one of those. Sylvester was now sitting with his head in his hands, looking completely exhausted. He had checked the letters and determined that it was safe to let Georgine have them, assuming that because Besenwans hadn't been a noble, he wouldn't have been able to employ any magic trickery. But there were plenty of ways to use coded messages to convey information. Does this mean you have the key right now since you're the High Bishop? Sylvester asked. It remains in the temple, but do not let that distract you from what matters most. Georgine has the means to obtain our foundation without coming to the castle or needing to probe you for his whereabouts. Considering that the Bible incident was carried out by Viscountess Daldorf, one of her namesworn, we can say with all certainty that she is targeting the entrance to the temple. Sylvester heaved a weary sigh. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any doubt about that. I was keeping an eye on the castle's door to the foundation, and even worked with Bonifacius to make sure the hidden passageway were all covered. It never even crossed my mind that she might steal it from the temple. Modern-day temples were run by blue priests without much mana at all, so Georgine wouldn't have any much trouble stealing our key. If she attacked our temple now, it will only be a matter of time before she sees the foundation. Knights guard the temple during Melkor's or my visits, I said, but in our absence, during the entirety of winter socializing bar, the dedication ritual, as well as during spring prayer and the harvest festival, there is very little protection to speak of. Remember also that we leave the Bible and its key in the temple while we are away. Sylvester swallowed dryly. Thinking about it now, the temple was ridiculously vulnerable. There were guards present when we archduke candidates visited, but otherwise a single key stood between an invader and our foundation. I continued, I trust you to decide what we should do with the Bible's key. We must also consider how to keep the foundation's true location hidden, and what you will disclose in order to protect it. Shoring up the temple's defenses out of the blue would draw unwanted attention. But you must do something. It is an Ob's duty to protect his foundation. Once spring prayer concluded and I departed from Aaronfest, I wouldn't have any right to get involved with such matters. I needed Sylvester to decide whether it was safe for me to give Melkor the Bible's key. No matter how we plan to defend our foundation, I'll make sure to involve the temple, Sylvester assured me. If my sister does intend to make her move, she'll do it during the upcoming spring prayer. What makes you so sure, I asked. My lips pursed. Jumping to conclusions was a surefire way to get blindsided. Last year's purge crippled her support base here at Interfest. She could wait until autumn, winter, or even next year. Still, there was an unsure glint in Sylvester's eye. Every single duchy knows you were bedridden for an entire season. One professor even made a huge fuss, demanding to know whether you had ascended to the towering heights, and was fired for her trouble. Who was it? Not to mention, we haven't yet publicized your return here to Aaronfest. Georgine must be convinced that our temple guards is thinning out. And most of all, she'll need to finish this before Ferdinand gets a room in the main building of Aronsbox Castle. She can only keep him away until the next Archduke conference, when his star binding will take place. Oh right, Ferdinand did say in his letter the moving had made it harder to gather intelligence. I can't thank you enough for this information, Rosamund. For the first time ever, I'm going to be one step ahead of my sister. If she means to act during spring prayer, this perhaps she is already nearby. Crossing duchy borders is trivial with that silver cloth. Sylvester squeezed his eyes shut. Lanzanov's envoys were dressed in silver cloth. I can't say whether it was the same kind of cloth we found, but if Georgine imports enough, we can probably assume that she's preparing for war. Messenore's knowledge didn't include anything about the silver cloth, or about Trug for that matter. Either they were new products, or the Grudgersite simply didn't contain information about other countries. Or maybe it did, but this information was in the section that had gone to Ferdinand. As I stood up to leave, Sylvester had one more question for me. By the way, Rosamund, where did you even learn about all this? I paused, then smiled. Where do you think? Sylvester stared at me for a moment, an indescribable look on his face. Did you really find it? He didn't specify what he was referring to. He's talking about the Grudgersite. We both understood what he was meant. Not the whole thing, just under 70% of it, and some crucial parts are missing. It's rather troublesome. I carefully made my way over to the door, then turned to Sylvester, stuck out my chest, and said, I shall go straight to the temple. Given that Georgine's lot had time to swap out our Bible, there might have done something to the key as well. We can roulette poison, but the sooner I check it, the better. I can confirm the Bible's authenticity based on its weight, appearance, and smell, but I am still uncertain about the key. Sylvester clasped his head and groaned. Make sure you're thorough with it. I don't want to find any weird traps on the key I'm supposed to pass down to future generations. See you later. Okay, Okay, I'm gonna have to end this one off here. I'll see you guys in the next one.